1,700 confirmed dead. Thousands more are expected to be declared dead as soon as their bodies are found. 3,000 are injured. 12,000 are missing. And that missing often means in earthquakes, they're dead. Two powerful earthquakes, 39 seconds apart, slammed northern Venezuela. President CEO Samaritan's Purse and President CEO of the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association, Reverend Franklin Graham, has been leading efforts in Venezuela to help. He joins me later this hour. And we have big problems right here at home with Mother Nature. She's roasting us. Millions of Americans across the eastern half of the United States are facing a dangerous heat dome. These temperatures are so high, so stifling, they are predicted will break heat records. How dangerous is this? More on that later in the show. And speaking of danger and a crisis, we have a chemotherapy drug shortage, and millions of people have dropped Obamacare health coverage. Find out why later this hour. I'm Greta Van Susteren. This is The Record. Just hours ago, before the Supreme Court turns off the lights until the first Monday in October when they come back to work, we got some big news. We got big decisions from them. First up, the High Court ruled 5-4 that in federal elections, states can accept mail-in ballots even after the polls have closed. This was a loss to the Republican National Committee. They brought the case, and moments ago, President Trump reacted.
Because of the mail-in ballot ruling, which was a little bit surprising, gives people more time to vote illegally, let's say. But the SAVE Act is even more important. The ruling, which a lot of people were waiting for, that was a ruling that was, I think it was very detrimental to honest elections.
And next up, the United States Supreme Court handing a loss to President Donald Trump. The High Court refused to hear his attempt to overturn a jury's finding that he sexually abused and later defamed writer E. Jean Carroll. This means the 2023 verdict against the president and a $5 million civil judgment will remain in place. And lastly, the United States Supreme Court declined to take up Professor Emeritus at Harvard University Alan Dershowitz's case. Professor Dershowitz says that CNN defamed him with its coverage of remarks made during President Trump's 2020 impeachment trial. Professor Emeritus at Harvard University Alan Dershowitz joins me. Nice to see you, sir. And the ruling, as I understand, doesn't mean they didn't defame you. It just means they have a right to defame you because you're a public figure, because you didn't show actual malice. Is that correct?
That's correct. All of the judges who wrote about it concluded that they had lied about me, they had defamed me, they had misstated what I said, but they said I couldn't prove by clear and convincing evidence, I didn't even have a right to try to prove it in a jury, that they did it maliciously. I mean, how do you get into somebody's brain, and how do you persuade a court of that? I think I could have persuaded a jury of that, but the Supreme Court said no. There were two dissenters, and I suspect there were really three dissenters. We know that Justices Gorsuch and Thomas dissented and wrote an opinion on my side. The other one, Justice Alito, I suspect dissented but didn't express his dissent in an opinion. He generally supports my point of view. I needed 4 for certiorari. I think I got 3, but I lacked the 4. But I do predict that at some point in the near future, the Supreme Court will go my way on this issue.
Well, this whole thing, when you're a public figure, I mean, theoretically, they get to say, anyone, media, including me, get to say things as bad, false about you, as long as we don't do it with, with actual malice. But that was a part of a Supreme Court case dating back to about 1963, when there are very few news outlets. Now there are a lot of news outlets, and now there's all this social media. Would that make a difference in whether or not the actual malice standard will stand for public figures in the future, do you think?
I think in the end it will, because there are no publishers. Most media that today produces false information doesn't have a publisher. It's not like the New York Times or CNN or Newsmax, where you have somebody in charge. It's people on the internet doing this. And so I suspect we're going to see this issue revisited over time. Mine was not an easy case, because although I'm not a public official, I was arguing on behalf of the President of the United States. So it puts me in a kind of higher or different status than an ordinary public figure who's just... Well,
Well,
Yeah.
but the other thing that can happen in the media is that we take someone who's not a public figure and we report about that person because he's connected to something, and so we catapult that person into the status of being a public figure because everybody's talking about that person, and then we have that higher standard which show actual malice after we've made the person a public figure.
Well, that's what the Supreme Court held in one of the cases, a case that Richard Nixon argued between the time that he lost and won for the presidency. He argued on behalf of a couple that they're broken into their house. They didn't want to be thrust into the public light, but the Supreme Court said because of the news coverage, they were public figures. I think that whole line of cases will eventually be overruled. I think there are now 3 or so justices who are willing to do it. I suspect that number will go up to 4, 5, and 6 as the media becomes less responsible and less subject to any kind of, remember, the government can't control the media. Media doesn't control itself, so only lawsuits can do it. So I think this was a law for individual rights, but the court thought differently, and I'm happy to go forward and argue in the court of public opinion.
I don't know, what the negotiations were with you or with CNN, but it seems to me that a lot of these cases, look, it's so easy to make a mistake, and it's so easy to say something wrong about it. But if you apologize and say you're sorry, and you apologize with bigger amplification than your original mistake, sometimes that cures the harm.
But they didn't apologize. They, went full forward. In fact, they just sent me a bill as a result of them winning the case. They just sent me a bill for around $60,000 saying I had to pay their court costs as well, even though they lied about me, defamed me, and managed to wiggle out of it by a constitutional rule that has no basis in the Constitution, requiring me to prove by clear and convincing evidence. And it will just deter people like me from engaging in free speech. It won't deter me. But if you say something and then pay $60,000 for having
what
said
is the 60,000? Where's the 60,000 court costs? Is that their lawyers? Or is that just the court costs?
Lawyers and court costs and
their lawyers, and how much are their lawyers charging them an hour? I mean, this whole thing is such a racket. How much are they charging their lawyers? I mean, how much are their lawyers charging an hour?
We'll have to look at
how many lawyers? Let me ask one other question. Were you deposed?
I was, yeah, and I.
Okay. Here's my question. How many lawyers did they send to your deposition?
A lot, and
okay, so that's the insanity of it, because one lawyer does the questioning. They send a lot of lawyers. I don't know if CNN did, but people send a lot of lawyers to a deposition, and then all the lawyers charge. I could do my own deposition. When I depose people, I showed up alone, but they show up with a whole corral of lawyers, and then they bill the client.
Look, if anybody wants to help defray my legal costs, I'd be happy to take contributions, but I'm not looking for charity. It's just the idea is that you shouldn't have to pay for exercising your free speech. I made a speech on the floor of the Senate defending the president. What I said was absolutely accurate. CNN distorted it, lied about me, and now I have to pay them for their lying about me. That doesn't seem fair, and it really does deter people from telling the truth.
If you were my client at this point, I would say, okay, we got a $60,000 bill. Now I want to know what goes into the $60,000. How many lawyers did what? How much did you charge to copy things, to Xerox things? I mean, pull back the scab on the billing of lawyers in general, because that's just, I mean, the way lawyers bill is unconscionable in many instances.
I agree with you, and we can fight that, but in the end, the important point is you shouldn't have to pay for bringing a lawsuit against somebody who defamed you and libeled you, even if the Supreme Court ultimately, in a 7-2 or 6-3 decision, ruled against you. Both sides should have to pay for their own costs. But I'll fight that. We'll see what happens. Probably I won't win.
Alan Dershowitz, Professor Emeritus at Harvard, thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Are the United States and Iran really going to be talking tomorrow? The answer may have your head spinning, because today President Trump took to Truth Social announcing this surprise, quote, Iran has requested a meeting. It will take place tomorrow in Doha, end quote. A meeting? And why the short notice? Well, shortly after Trump's post, White House Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt added this. that United States Special Envoy to Middle East, Steve Witkoff, and U.S. Special Envoy for Peace, Jared Kushner, will be traveling to Doha for the meeting with Iran tomorrow. Moments ago, President Trump said this.
They're going to Qatar. I think they've already left, or they're just about getting ready to leave. So we'll see how that goes. But we're doing very well on that front. But the meeting in Doha is going to be perhaps important, perhaps not. We're going to find out. But we're winning militarily. It's almost won militarily, I would say.
But now, and this is where your head will spin, Iran's foreign ministry spokesperson said in a statement, quote, an Iranian technical delegation will visit Qatar this week, but has no relation to U.S. officials visiting the country, end quote. Coming up, the amount of destruction and the level of despair is impossible to reduce to words. At this hour, thousands are missing from two earthquakes 39 seconds apart. As with any crisis overseas or right here at home, Samaritan's Purse is there. Already it has deployed a massive response. President and CEO of Samaritan's Purse, Reverend Franklin Graham, joins me next. That when the record continues.
It takes a second, an accident, a diagnosis, when everything changes. If something does happen, would your family be protected? Now, Crown Atlantic has made getting life insurance fast, simple, and with the best rates. Go online to get your free instant quote. It takes just minutes, and you'll find the best deals available. Don't wait until tomorrow. Your life is too important. Act today to protect you and your family.
Every day, bumps and bangs happen. Bruises are optional. Use daily dermatologist-recommended Dermend and reduce the appearance of bruises. Get Dermend Moisturizing Bruise Cream in the first aid aisle.
Here's Chris Cunahan with the Leaf Filter Gutter Report.
From blizzards to downpours to windstorms or heat waves, no matter where you live, Leaf Filter keeps your gutters clog-free year-round. Schedule your free inspection today. Call 833-LEAF-FILTER or visit leaffilter.com.
The grind catches up with everyone, even me. That's why I trust Cunol Ultra High Absorption Turmeric to support my joint health. It's the #1 doctor-recommended form of turmeric. It helps you keep doing the things you love at every age. Cunol, the brand I trust.
Hello, everyone. It's President Donald J. Trump, and it's Trump time. Check out this red beauty. It's one of my new watches. Wear it proudly on your wrist, and everyone will know exactly what it's for, who it represents. It's really going to be something special. It's for your favorite president. Get your watch today at gettrumpwatches.com. Please make a great gift. It's Trump time.
To dream the impossible dream, to fight the unbeatable foe, to reach the unreachable star.
In Venezuela, the destruction is so impossible to measure, other than to say it is absolutely catastrophic. Right now, more than 1,700 people are confirmed dead, but that number is certain to rise with all the tens of thousands who remain missing. 5 days ago, 2 strong earthquakes toppled buildings and crushed people inside them. And today there was an aftershock. Rescuers have been working around the clock, combing through collapsed buildings, hoping to find survivors. And believe it or not, these 5 days later, survivors are still being pulled from the rubble. Thousands of helping hands from around the world have raced to Venezuela to help. And as always, a fully equipped and prepared Samaritan's Purse is already there helping. Samaritan's Purse sent a Boeing 767 jet full of supplies to Venezuela. That plane also carried, and it has already been assembled, an emergency field hospital. President and CEO of Samaritan's Purse and President and CEO of the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association, Reverend Franklin Graham, joins me. Nice to see you, sir. And tell me, when did the hospital leave? And tell me, this is a Tier 3, your biggest hospital. What is it that you have set up?
Yes, Greta, it's up. And we would be open, but we were having difficulty with the airport there. The airport is not used to handling a number of aircraft at one time, and so it's just delayed. So I've talked to Mark Rubio's office today, or sent a letter to him, and he understands the problem. I think they're going to hopefully put the U.S. military in charge of air traffic control. But that's the hospital is up, Greta, and we're waiting for our people to get in. Hopefully they'll be in tonight.
Well, that's the same problem you've had other places. I remember in 2010 in Haiti, is that all the planes could get in. I mean, you couldn't get all the planes in to get the supplies because the runways are such a mess, and the planes didn't leave, leaving no room for new planes to come in. I mean, that was a nightmare getting supplies in.
Yeah, it got fixed when the U.S. military got in there and took control of the airport, and it began to run efficiently. And I think that will happen here. Hopefully, we'll see that tonight or in the morning. But Greta, there is so much destruction. You have hundreds of buildings that collapsed, but there's over 1,000 buildings that they're standing, but they're structurally damaged, and people can't go back in them. They can't live in them. It's too dangerous. And so you've got not only the injuries and I don't know, some around 1,500 people that have died, but there's thousands, I've estimated somewhere around 40,000 people that are unaccounted for. So the death toll is going to go up, Greta, and the need is just huge. There's about 850 churches in this area where the earthquake was that we have a relationship with Samaritan's Purse to do an Operation Christmas Child, which you and your husband, John, have been a part of this for a long time. And so we've got churches down there. We've got the connections. It's going to be a long process. We will be there for a long time, though, Greta. This is not something we just run in and run out. We're there for a long time.
Boy, it sure is an appreciation for that big 767 that you own, because without that and the number of volunteers that race to help, I mean, how would you get that stuff down there? I couldn't.
Well, it'd be almost impossible, Greta. So we're just thankful that God has given us assets like this to use. It comes from Him. It's God's people that support us with their finances, but more importantly with their prayers. And the people of Venezuela, they need prayer, and I cannot emphasize that enough. They need prayer. There's so much suffering right now, and we just need to pray that God will put His arms around them and comfort them. That only the way He can do it. So this place is tough. But we're there, and we're used to places like this. But it just breaks your heart when you see so many people suffering.
But even the mechanics of doing this, I've seen your field hospital in Central Park. Obviously, that was a terrible crisis for the United States during COVID. But these field hospitals that you put up, whether it's in Iraq, I've seen them in Iraq, I've seen them in Ukraine, I've seen them in Jamaica, I've seen them in Haiti, all these places. It's not like we have a terrific relationship going in that you can just all of a sudden go in and put the tents down. There's so much that goes on just behind the scenes to get into some of these places that we haven't spent a lot of time in.
Well, Greta, within 2 days of the earthquake, we had our permissions to go in, and we had the hospital packed, and so we're they have it set up ready to open today. It just shows you we got a great team of men and women that are committed to this, and they're doing it in the name of Jesus Christ. That's why they do it. That's why they work like this. That's why they go to such difficult places, because of their love for Jesus Christ and wanting the people there to know that God hasn't forgotten them. He hasn't turned His back on them. And so, but it takes the government. The U.S. government has been great to work with down here, and the Venezuelans have been great to work with. We've had cooperation at every turn, and but we're going to need more help. We've got to get that airport fixed.
Indeed. It's just sort of interesting, though. I mean, I don't know how you plan for these, because you've got a situation like you've deployed some people for Ebola in Africa. I mean, you've got people deployed all over the world, and then this. You have these hospitals on the shelf, so to speak, ready to go. But even the people have to be trained how to do things, and they're all skilled and trained and ready. So it's quite an interesting army that you have at Samaritan's Purse, so to speak.
Well, it's God's army, Greta, and it's a privilege to be able to work with these men and women who are professional people. They know what they're doing, and so yes, we do training year round, just being prepared for days like this. And so when you have a day like this, it comes together and it works because of the training, because of the assets that God has allowed us to have. and we're just thrilled that we can use it to help people and to do it in Jesus' name.
Indeed, and also the State Department, because we have such a terrific reputation with the State Department, we see our government move very quickly to help with visas and everything, and thank you to them. Reverend Franklin Graham, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Greta.
And there's a big day today in criminal court. 2 people with alleged horrific intentions towards the president facing judges. Up first, Cole Allen. He's accused of opening fire on April 25 during the White House Correspondent Dinner. He was in federal court here in Washington. Allen has pleaded not guilty to multiple charges, including attempted assassination of the president. If convicted, Allen faces life in prison. Today, his lawyers did say they are discussing a possible plea deal, but the terms they are discussing were not disclosed. Also in court today, this man. He is Abraham Hermosillo Alvarez. The Department of Homeland Security says he is an illegal alien from Mexico and that he is the alleged ringleader of a plot to attack the UFC fight at the White House. On June 14th, as you know, thousands attended that UFC event. The FBI said the plot involved armed drones with snipers on standby for when people fled the area due to an armed drone. Obviously, that did not happen. Today in court, the judge declined to release the suspect pending trial. The judge concluded the defendant is a flight risk. Alvarez faces federal charges, including murder conspiracy. If convicted, he also faces life in prison. Coming up, another courtroom was packed with reporters and international news organizations. Why? A big update on a double murder case. That when the record continues.
O'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Do you believe in miracles? Is this not a miracle? All these homes here are mortgage-free homes.
This amenity center, along with this community, speaks volumes without even saying a word.
It's like a big dining room table in your house. This amenity center is going to bring so many families together all day, every day.
The only way that this happens is out of people's generosity and kindness. Every single bit makes a difference in someone's life.
Go to T2T.org.
There's no way a mouthwash can prevent bad breath for 12 hours.
You're right, Bill. Mouthwash can't, but this is dentist-developed Smart Mouth Activated Mouthwash.
Activated?
Yeah, if your mouthwash isn't activated, it's not Smart Mouth. See, this plus this activate for 12 hours of bad breath prevention, guaranteed. Try it. You won't have bad breath in the morning. Good night, Bill.
Get dentist-developed Smart Mouth today. It's the smarter mouthwash, available at these fine retailers.
The summer of savings continues at Lumber Liquidators. Hurry in for great deals on over 250 varieties of durable flooring. Save over 20, 30, 40, 50% on top-selling favorites for every room. Find luxury plank vinyl for as low as 69 cents a square foot. Pre-finished engineered hardwood from $179 a square foot. And over 15 styles of waterproof click vinyl starting at just $199 a square foot. Find your next floor for less during the summer of savings. Start shopping nationwide or online at lumberliquidators.com.
Back when there were workforce planning fires, I was hot stuff. Then they got Bamboo HR. Now things run smoothly, and my job's extinguished.
Need a better way to infuse calm into your workplace? That's Bambooable. That's Bamboo HR.
Over time, moss, mold, and mildew stains cover your home, and cleaning them is too much work. You need Wet and Forget, the easy bleach-free way to clean tough outdoor stains. For decks, patios, and cushions, use Wet and Forget outdoor spaces. No scrubbing, no rinsing. Just apply and let it do the work for you over time. Got a bigger job? Reach second-story siding and roofs with Outdoor Max. Up to a 30-foot reach and 2 times the coverage. Get Wet and Forget at these leading retailers.
I am naturally biased because I just joined Ridge as the chief creative partner, but I'm just going to speak facts here. It's slim, it's RFID blocking, it's awesome, it's comfortable, I love it. I carry it every day. And then every wallet at Ridge.com has like an unlimited lifetime warranty, so you don't have to worry about it falling apart. Check it out at Ridge.com.
A better heart health supplement. That's what we all want. That's why for 8 years now, I've relied on this heart powder. It's Super Beats, and I swear by it.
Super Beats is the original #1 selling beet brand for healthy blood pressure support. The only cardiologist-recommended beet brand that's also trusted by over 40 national championship-winning pro and college sports teams for cardio-powered energy.
For cardio results you can feel, the only brand I trust is Super Beats.
Try Super Beats today at human.com.
At Omaha Steaks, we take premium aged steak and turn it into pure ground burgers like this. Our Burger Perfection flight comes with 20 big, juicy burgers, all for just $79.99 at omahasteaks.com/TV. Burger Perfection, guaranteed.
Remember Alex Murdaugh, the South Carolina disbarred lawyer convicted of killing his wife and son? Then his convictions were reversed, so now he's on track for his retrial, but he's going to have to wait until April 5. Murdaugh learned that news today in court, where he appeared shackled in a jail-issued orange jumpsuit. The courtroom in Lexington, South Carolina was packed with the public, dozens of news organizations, including international ones, and true crime podcasters. This was Murdaugh's first time in court since his guilty convictions were overturned. Last month, South Carolina Supreme Court overturned the murder convictions. The state's highest court said his trial was tainted because of courtroom clerk Becky Hill. She made comments to jurors during the trial implying Murdaugh's guilt. Murdaugh is already in prison on other charges. He pleaded guilty to stealing millions of dollars from clients and also from his law firm. Former federal assistant U.S. attorney in South Carolina, Nathan Williams, joins me. Nice to talk to you, sir. And how bad is it for prosecutors? I know how bad it is for defense lawyers to retry cases. It's always pretty boring because you've already run through it one time.
Well, I think what today showed was interesting was part of what Judge McCaslin said was that the prior rulings or prior judges' rulings go out the window. So I think it's going to be very interesting how she reconsiders those. She set the April 5th trial date. She was firm in that. She was also firm, though, in her structure and ordering motions. So the takeaway sort of from this morning was she's taking the trial timeline seriously, and it might be tough on both sides if she's going to reconsider all of those motions and in some ways disregard the prior trial.
But that wasn't the defect in the trial, the rulings on the motions during that trial or on anything. What was the defect was the courtroom clerk poisoning the jury. So is that, I mean, I never thought about this before, but is that customary? Is that everything gets revisited rather than, I mean, nothing remains in terms of any of the earlier rulings?
Well, you would hope there's consistency there, but certainly the second judge is not bound by the prior trial. Now, it was interesting in the Supreme Court opinion, they overturned the opinion clearly because of the misconduct with the jury, but there was also some very strong language in there about the amount of financial crime and prior bad act evidence brought in by the prosecutors, and really a directive towards the next court to not allow so much of that in. And, there's been a lot of talk already about a venue change. Arguably, that sort of fits in with the issues that happened in the first venue. Maybe that case was too big for that county. And so I fully expect the venue motion to be a major one. And I think there's going to be some, for at least from what the judge signaled today, maybe some different types of rulings going forward.
Well, usually venue changes because you're looking for a community that hasn't heard about the case, isn't already poisoned, but this has got international coverage. So change of venue within the state of South Carolina seems very difficult to achieve the goal of finding people that really don't know much about the case. I mean, you can go out to Seattle, Washington, and people have heard about it, and they have international press there.
Yeah, I think that's right. It's certainly a good example of how the case has changed from the first time it was tried until now. Maybe the first time through, I mean, they kept it local. They kept it in Murdaugh's backyard, so to speak. Now, sure, everybody in the state's heard about it. And it's still going to be a challenge to find, I think, fair jurors across the state. But certainly the idea of keeping it in his backyard seems very differently postured than it may have been the first time through.
Before he was arrested, was he a big deal in the bar in the South Carolina? Had you ever heard of him?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sort of in Charleston, which is a little distance from that area, but absolutely. Him, frankly, his family. I think he was a well-known sort of prosecutor, also defense lawyer, and his family was former prosecutors. So yeah, it's absolutely a big name in the legal community, certainly much more in that area, in the Hampton, Walterboro, Colleton County area, but absolutely sort of anybody that knew about that part of the state would have recognized that family name, especially in the legal community.
What surprises me is that there would be a second trial, because my experience is a little dated, is that when you have the first trial, even if it ends up in reversal for some reason, your client gets to see the evidence against him, sort of gets to see the writing on the wall. So the client is more particularly interested in a plea, knowing that he's likely to get convicted again. And in this case, he's already doing time for stealing money and big time. So he's already got a lot of time he's dealing with. So I'm surprised at this. I would be surprised if this went to trial. Would you be or not?
Well, I think it kind of cuts both ways, meaning those other sentences that are backstopping this case. He's spending literally probably the rest of his life in prison. So to him, it's a way to maybe salvage his reputation, at least in his own mind, and to continue denying any responsibility for these crimes. And a lot of people go to trial for that reason, to preserve their own sort of legacy and their name, maybe just in that small way. On the one hand, it doesn't make a lot of sense. He's in prison anyway. On the other, why not go to trial if you're going to be sitting in prison anyway?
I guess you can go to the library and write briefs and stuff. And if you plead, that's sort of the end of that one. You have nothing to do. All right. How shocking was this case to the community?
Well, it's horrific on its own, right? I mean, it's a double murder. It's a father killing his son, which is horrible. His wife, it is horrific on any level. And then you sort of throw it into a small town, high profile individual. I mean, it's shocking. There's a reason why it's gotten the national attention. It's horrible. I mean, the death penalty's been thrown out there, I think, for good reason. And I don't think that's being pursued, but it certainly is on that caliber. And then, like I said, you throw in the sort of the political and the dynasty aspects of the family, and it's shocking. It's absolutely not what you would expect from anyone, let alone somebody of his sort of posterity and posture.
Why isn't the first judge retrying this?
So he retired. I mean, that's probably the easiest answer. That was sort of his last
that's
case.
the answer. You can bring him back out of retirement, though, but...
Yeah, probably not for this. Yeah, so he retired. Judge McCaslin is a very well-known judge. She's very direct. I think today we sort of saw that. She was sort of dead on with, she said, we're trying this case in April. And she said that sort of without due regard to what each side was going to argue for more time and what else needed to happen. And so she is a well-known, a well-respected judge. And I think today she was pretty direct about getting this case tried around Easter, she said.
Well, there used to be a federal judge in Virginia. He would have said, you all be ready August 1st. I mean, it's like, so April seemed late to me. We feared that judge. Anyway, Nathan Williams, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Now to another turnaround, but this one involving the midterms. Well, you're not going to believe this one. After previously banning one Dan Sullivan from running in the race for U.S. Senate from the state of Alaska, a judge has now ruled there can be two Dan Sullivans on the ballot. Alaska's incumbent Republican Senator is Dan S. Sullivan. One of his opponents is Dan J. Sullivan. What I'm sure is no accident, both Dan Sullivan campaign logos are similar. They have the same colors. Both have stars. From our prior reporting, you know that 2 weeks ago, Dan Sullivan with a J was barred from the ballot. Alaska's top elections official said Sullivan with a J entered the race for Alaska's senator to mislead voters. The elections official said that his candidacy was not in good faith. But then, Friday, here we go again, an Alaska Superior Court judge reversed it. The judge said barring Dan J. Sullivan was unconstitutional. Current Alaska Senator Dan S. Sullivan has accused Dan J. Sullivan of working with Democratic Senate candidate Mary Peltola. Why would Sullivan with a J do that? Dan S. Sullivan says to sow confusion and boost Peltola's chances of winning in the general election in November.
Everybody has a right to be on the ballot, but you don't have a right to be on the ballot if your primary goal is to trick Alaskans and rig the vote in favor of another candidate.
So what happens next? A trip to the Alaska Supreme Court. A hearing happened earlier, so now we are awaiting a ruling, and it needs to happen soon, though, because the primary for the Senate seat is August 18th, and tomorrow, ballots need to be printed for that primary. Well, is a socialist United States president in the cards? Could we really have a socialist president?
I think a democratic socialist can get elected anywhere across this country for any position. What I think we need to bring is a focus on working people.
And that's the direction that the party should go in terms of selecting a candidate for 2028.
I think the direction that the party should go in is how best to fight for working people. I think we need to have a platform and a vision that doesn't sound as if it was cooked up by consultants.
New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani is not eligible to run for president. That's because he was born in Uganda. Nonetheless, He was asked about running for U.S. president.
Do you think that's something that should be changed in the Constitution? It would take an amendment, but do you think that we should change that?
No.
No.
I think the Constitution looks good the way it is.
Just the way it is.
Just the way it is. I'm very excited to focus on New York City.
There is one Democrat who has already taken himself out of the running for the White House.
I am not running for president in 2028. I have no interest in running for president in 2028. I am laser focused on this Senate race in Georgia, where I'm facing a disgraced congressman, one of the most extreme members of Congress in the country, an election denier.
Incumbent U.S. Senator from Georgia, Jon Ossoff, faces Congressman Mike Collins in November. And coming up, millions of Americans dropping Obamacare. The reason? That answer when the record continues.
Newsmax shoots it straight. No talking down to me.
Don't tell me how to think.
Don't tell me how to think. Don't tell me how to think.
I trust Newsmax. Newsmax.
They don't tell me how to think. They let me decide.
Real news for real people.
Think you need a new roof? Think again. Most roofing companies only make money one way, by selling you a new roof. But what if your roof isn't worn out, just dried out? And with just a little love, you could put off an expensive roof replacement for up to 15 years, at a fraction of the cost of a new roof. Roofmax is a scientifically engineered restoration formula that brings your shingle life back to new. Scan the code and get a free roof tune-up with your Roofmax restoration.
As a kid, I was desperate for the $300 pairs of sunglasses that I saw all the athletes in my life wear, but it was just not realistic for me to spend that kind of money on sunglasses, something that I would probably lose or break. And that was the genesis for starting Shady Rays, high-quality, polarized, performance sunglasses with lost and broken protection. If you'd like to try a pair completely risk-free, see why millions have switched to Shady Rays at shadyrays.com and shop our full collection.
Where's the admission desk at your hospital? You may need it sooner than you think. It's the middle of the night and you, your spouse, or your child is sick, high fever, can't keep anything down, and getting worse. Now you're waiting in the ER, and everyone gets seen before you. And when I finally see you and order prescriptions, you still have to wait for your pharmacy to open and hope they have what I prescribed. This is the medical emergency kit. It's stocked with essential medications, including amoxicillin, generic Z-Pak, and ivermectin. Now you have the right medications when you need them. And it's why I and so many of my colleagues have medical emergency kits. It's like having an urgent care and pharmacy in your home. Just fill out a brief online medical intake and your kit, prescribed by a licensed provider, is shipped to your door. Here's how to order.
Order your kit now and save $45. Visit urgentcarekit.com/news. That's urgentcarekit.com/news.
Hey, I'm Dr. Drupinski. I've been a physician for 4 decades. I've been looking at the aging process for a long time, and Fatty 15 is one product that actually slows it down. Fatty 15 comes out of Navy dolphin research. A brilliant veterinarian realized that dolphins get disease much like humans. She looked at what predisposed to those problems, isolated the molecule, gave it to the animals, they didn't get the problem. Without the C15, our cells become fragile and age and oxidize. This pushes that back. Cell health equals physical health. That's why I take Fatty 15.
There are only a few men I'd trust with my life. 2 of them built this wallet. I've known the guys behind Proof for nearly 20 years, and we've been through hell and back together. When they told me they were building the wallet, I just said, bill me now, I'm in. This isn't some fashion piece. This isn't just some trend. These wallets are a direct reflection of the kind of men who built it. It's built to last, built to function, and designed to carry everything you need and more. If anything happens to it, they'll take care of it. No questions, no fine print. If you knew the guys who created this wallet, you wouldn't carry anything else. Go check them out, because they built this thing right.
What if I told you you can get a brand new metal roof from Erie Home for 50% off the installation? Now you can. Our metal roofs are proven to withstand 120 miles per hour wind and 2-inch hail, all backed by a 50-year warranty. Call now for your free estimate.
A huge national disappointment, and now millions of people have dropped out of Obamacare. Now federal data compared enrollment numbers from February of last year to February of this year. The numbers show in February this year, nearly 3 million people were no longer insured under the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. The Department of Health and Human Services attributes the 13% drop in enrollment to a federal crackdown on fraud, but health analysts say the drop is likely due to the January 2026 expiration of federal subsidies. After those subsidies expired, premiums doubled for many Americans. They just can't afford it. President Trump and Republicans have vowed to replace Obamacare, but so far, and tragically, nothing has happened. And now this, a possible shortage of chemotherapy drugs. That is, of course, causing fear nationwide among doctors and cancer patients. Doctors treating cancer patients are now worrying this shortage could lead to widespread rationing. Why the shortage, and what can the government do to help? The Director of National Health Communications for the Office of the Surgeon General and Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary for Health Policy, Dr. Stephanie Haridopolos, joins me. Nice to see you.
Thank you, Greta. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, obviously, I mean, you hear chemotherapy and you hear shortage and you get scared. Is it possible that we're having some sort of shortage of chemotherapy drugs?
Listen, first and foremost, when anyone is diagnosed with cancer, my empathetic heart as a physician goes out to them. I don't want them to worry right now. I want them to be rest assured that FDA is doing everything they can to make sure that they will not go without their chemotherapy medications.
Well, they're doing everything they can, but is it a possibility that there is a shortage? Some doctors are saying that, you know, they're spreading out the chemotherapy, which of course sends shivers up my spine because I'm not a doctor, and I think that you better get your chemotherapy on time before it spreads, because then you have a worse problem. Is there some sort of, at least, concern about a possible shortage?
Well, there are a couple of manufacturing plants that maybe had a little hiccup in their manufacturing, but the FDA is working with those manufacturers to make sure that they can do everything they can to increase their supply right now. They are also working with other previous manufacturers that used to make the medication to see if they can restart, and also exploring additional supply for temporary from offshore importing in. So I think that right now the medications are available by the main distributors. And of course, the oncology societies always have protocols and backups for any medications that could be good alternatives. But right now, we still have green light issues with them.
I'll tell you what always scares me, and this goes a little bit broader, is that I've been sitting at this anchor desk for the last 30 years, and sometimes I hear or read that a lot of our drugs are made overseas, and especially in China. And a lot of the drugs, a lot of people need to stay alive. And I worry when drugs are manufactured overseas, because if we make somebody mad at us, we might not get it. Are chemotherapy drugs, are a good portion of them made here in the United States, or are they made overseas? Should I add that list to my list of fear?
It's mixed, and it underscores the need for us to increase our domestic manufacturing, and that's why President Trump has signed some executive orders to do that very same thing, to increase our resiliencies here. But some of them are made overseas, and actually for what just was posted on the FDA with the current ifosfamide, that one, most of them are actually made here in this country. But we're working on, look, they're generics. They've been out for decades. And, it's the cost is not for the pharmaceutical companies and manufacturing. They want, it's a generic med, so they're not making a lot of money. So we need incentives to encourage them to manufacture here on our soil.
And just to sort of put in simple terms, if you're the one making the drug, you can set the price and make a good deal. But if the patent expires and it becomes a generic and everybody's making it, suddenly you're not making the money on it. And so suddenly, sometimes you run into a supply issue.
Correct. And so we need to make sure that there are manufacturers that are willing to produce the generics, have the incentives to do it, that the regulatory framework with FDA is there for them to make it easier, but we can't compromise quality for these medications.
What if you're in some rural community and all of a sudden the oncologist says, we're short, you'll have to come back in 2 weeks? I mean, what should the consumer do? Or is that just never going to happen right now? Is it going to happen to anybody?
The hospitals have this is hospital-based medications, and so Amerisource, Cardinal, and McKesson are the three main distributors. Right now, these hospitals are still able to get the carboplatin, cisplatin, ifosfamide. Those are the main ones that we worry about maybe having.
Those are the ones that said they were worried about the shortage in, those very ones you named.
Correct. Those are used for sometimes lymphomas, testicular cancer, or in lung cancers. But right now you are able to get it, and there are also alternative regimens. Like there are curative treatments and then there's palliative treatments. So curative treatments will always have top priority. And making sure that you get them for, let's say, a testicular cancer with carboplatin.
I hear that immunotherapy, Keytruda, is like unbelievable saving lives. I take it there's no shortage of that one. That's a little different, but is because that's still that's not generic yet.
That's right, and that one is not on the FDA website. But we encourage, of course, physicians and hospitals to look at the FDA website. They're the ones that are in control of making sure that we don't see shortages, and accessdata.fda.gov is where that you can find it. Yes.
Doctor, thank you very much. I hope you come back. Thank you.
You're most welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And a tragic story, former NFL running back Chris Johnson says he has been diagnosed with ALS. That is a degenerative neurological disorder that typically leads to progressive paralysis. This terrible disorder takes away the ability to move, talk, and even breathe. Today, in an interview on Good Morning America, Johnson said he received the diagnosis last year at the age of 39. He had noticed a weakness in his right hand, which led to the testing. Johnson, who played for the Tennessee Titans, adds that because he has no family history of ALS, his doctors believe his case is what's called sporadic ALS. Johnson, who was the 2009 Offensive Player of the Year, currently uses a speech-generating device to speak. He credits his family for giving him a, quote, reason to keep going. Today, Titans owner Amy Adams-Strunk released a statement on Johnson's diagnosis, saying in part, quote, learning of this news is extremely difficult, and we will support Chris every step of the way throughout his journey. We are holding him and his family close, end quote. Coming up, not something you want to hear while flying. You're going to hear the audio from inside the cockpit. That when the record continues.
Feeling winded and short of breath when you should be enjoying life? Your days are made for more than this. And if you find yourself stopping more and more to catch your breath, you could be experiencing what we call temporary oxygen insufficiency. Don't let shortness of breath ruin your day. Give yourself a boost with Boost Oxygen. A few deep breaths of Boost Oxygen is all you need to help combat the negative effects of what we call temporary oxygen insufficiency, so you can get back to doing the things you love. Boost Oxygen contains pure supplemental oxygen that is safe for daily use and comes in a portable, lightweight canister without a prescription.
Now I live life on my terms. With Boost Oxygen, I am unstoppable.
Get all-natural 5-star respiratory support with Boost Oxygen. Get Boost Oxygen at these fine retailers.
My dad has never been in better shape. He had a stroke and passed away. He had a life insurance policy. Ethos.com. In 10 minutes, you can be covered with life insurance.
Check your price today at ethos.com.
There's a power within each of us. When awakened, it can boost performance, enhance learning, even help you work smarter. And you can unlock it with one simple thing: better sleep. Sattva provides that with our luxury mattresses, handcrafted with premium materials in our American factories. We even deliver to any room in your home for free. Sattva, you deserve the comfort of a great night's sleep.
Hello, everyone. It's President Donald J. Trump, and it's Trump time. Check out this red beauty. It's one of my new watches. Wear it proudly on your wrist, and everyone will know exactly what it's for, who it represents. It's really going to be something special. It's for your favorite president. Get your watch today at gettrumpwatches.com. These make a great gift. It's Trump time.
Most people call leaf filter when their gutters are clogged and they notice one of the many issues that can bring. You can get ahead of costly damage by protecting your home's gutters today.
Schedule your free inspection today. Call 833-LEAF-FILTER or visit leaffilter.com.
Free yourself from prying eyes. Ask privately with Duck.ai. Visit duck.ai to chat privately with ChatGPT, Claude, and other AIs for free, all in one place. Duck.ai is from DuckDuckGo, where AI is private and optional.
It's going to be a rough couple days here in the United States for a lot of people. Millions of Americans are getting cooked by the temperatures outdoors. And this week, the temperatures in central U.S., Midwest, and East Coast are going to reach record-breaking numbers and even life-threatening levels. On your screen is a map of the active heat alerts across the United States. The alerts include extreme heat watches and extreme heat warnings. Those mean temperatures will feel like 110 degrees or higher. There are also heat advisories where temperatures will feel like 105 degrees or higher. This Thursday is set to break new records. In Philadelphia, its current record is 103 degrees, which was set way back in 1901. What is the expected temperature this week? 105 degrees. And here in the nation's capital, Washington, D.C., the current record is 101 degrees. However, Thursday is set to beat that record and climb to 103 degrees. This will break a 128-year record high here in Washington. Meanwhile, earlier today, a commercial flight hit a drone. A JetBlue plane was preparing to land at New York's John F. Kennedy Airport, but the pilot reported a collision.
948 Kennedy Tower, runway 13 left, clear to land.
We are clear to land, 13 left. And just quickly, I couldn't talk to approach, but we collided with a drone back there in the turn as we were coming to assault. Just wanted to pass that to you.
You said you collided?
Yep, it hit us right above the cockpit.
All right, so it's about, like, what, 2 miles back at 3,000 feet you were at?
Affirmative.
Well, that pilot sounds pretty calm for having a drone hit it. That plane and its 159 passengers did land safely. The airplane says there was no damage to the plane, or the airline says that. And just 3 days ago, a similar incident happened. It was 30 miles west of JFK Airport at New Jersey's Newark Airport. During landing, a United Airlines flight had a near miss with a drone. Here's the audio from the control tower.
And we almost hit a drone right there at Gimme, United 1513, about 100 feet below us.
Right where you're at now?
Exactly.
Okay. And United 1513, do you get a look at it? Do you know the color or any, how much propellers or anything like that, whatever they're called?
Yeah, it was like a circular shape, and that was about it. It looked like it was about 3 feet wide.
Well, that plane took off from Key West, Florida, and there were 106 passengers and 5 crew members on board. The plane obviously landed safely at Newark. The FAA says it is investigating both the Newark and JFK drone incidents. The FAA has a strict no-fly zone for drones near airports, but apparently that doesn't work very well because those 2 airports have those 2 drones, and these airports are very close to each other. Coming up, what do you do when a grizzly bear gets this close to you and to your dog? That when the record continues.
You know, everybody's reporting the same stories, the same spin. You turn the channel, it's always the same. But not us. We're different. We report the real news. No spin, just the facts. Turn to us, and you won't turn back.
Tune in to Rob Schmidt tonight on Newsmax.
Are you ready to save big this summer?
Doesn't everybody want to save money?
The Consumer Cellular Summer Switch event is finally here. You could cut up to 50% off your big wireless bill. And right now, save an extra $50 off with code SAVE50.
Go save some money. It's just a great deal.
You'll get the same fast, reliable nationwide coverage you get from big wireless for up to 50% off.
Same tower, same coverage.
I'm getting big wireless coverage without the big wireless price tag. Big cities, small cities, rural areas, rock solid.
Now is the best time to switch all year during the Consumer Cellular Summer Switch event. You could cut up to 50% off your big wireless bill. And right now, save an extra $50 off with code SAVE50.
I switched to save money. I stayed because I love Consumer Cellular.
Consumer Cellular customers ranked us #1 in network coverage satisfaction.
The customer service is amazing.
You get a person right away, and it's inexpensive, too.
Yes.
Get unlimited for just $35 a month for one line.
I got the benefits of ARP and the quality service from Consumer Cellular, so what a happy marriage. It's just a great deal.
You can keep your number, you can keep your phone.
Or get a new one. We've got all the latest phones. You can talk with a U.S.-based sales rep in about 15 seconds.
That phone call reduced my bill by almost 50%.
I'm saving about $50 a month.
The switch process was incredibly easy. Touch a button, and that was it. I was switched.
Save money. Save money. Make the switch.
The Summer Switch event is the perfect time to make the switch. You could cut your bill by up to 50%. And call right now to save an extra $50 off with code SAVE50. And AARP members save even more. So call now and save big during the Consumer Cellular Summer Switch event. Call 1-800-649-1326. That's 1-800-649-1326.
What if you're sick at home or traveling and can't get medical help or prescriptions? Doctors say a medical emergency kit is the answer. Joining me is Dr. Drew.
Thank you. And yes, these kits put you in charge of your health. They come with physician-prescribed medication to treat multiple common and some serious issues as well.
What are some examples?
Sure. Generic Z-Pak, amoxicillin, other essential antibiotics and antivirals that treat flu, pneumonia, strep, ear infections, sinus infections, urinary tract infections, and more.
So it is like urgent care and a pharmacy at home?
Exactly. No waiting, no pharmacy, no copays. You feel better faster and avoid serious complications.
How do you know what medicines to take?
You just match your symptoms to the doctor-written guide or schedule a quick telehealth call.
Sound advice. Order online in minutes at the website below and save $45. Thank you, doctor.
Visit urgentcarekit.com/news, promo code news.
Your mouthwash routine just got a whole lot smarter. Use Smart Mouth Activated Morning Mouthwash with B12 for all-day bad breath prevention. Guaranteed. If your mouthwash isn't activated, it's not Smart Mouth. Kickstart your morning. Get Smart Mouth Activated Mouthwash with B12.
Hey, I'm Dr. Drew Pinsky. I've been looking at the aging process for a long time. Fatty 15 actually slows it down. Fatty 15 comes out of Navy dolphin research. Without the C15, our cells become fragile and age and oxidize. This pushes that back. That's why I take Fatty 15.
A woman and her dog narrowly escaped a close call with a grizzly bear. The woman, named Jessie, went out for a walk with her dog in Alberta, Canada. Shortly after leaving her driveway, the grizzly bear approached them. He was aggressive, and he kept following them.
Enough! Hey! No! No! Hey! Hey! Stop it! Stop! Stop! Enough! No! Hey! Hey! Stop! Go! Go!
That's scary. The woman eventually scared the bear away by throwing her coffee mug. That brought her some time to run away from the bear, but then the bear started chasing them again. People nearby tried to help distract the grizzly, but what finally got the bear off their backs? The bear spotted a moose, so he chased the moose instead. Thankfully, no one was hurt. Don't know a report on the poor moose. And don't forget, I have a new podcast called Greta Wire. You're going to like it. It's different. Tomorrow you will meet a man who I got out of prison in the 1980s. He had a 108-year sentence, so he likes me. You can subscribe now to Greta Wire on your favorite podcast app, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or at newsmax.com/listen. Thank you for watching. Ed Henry, The Big Take, is up next. Stay with Newsmax.
Information. Truth is freedom. Is Newsmax. It's real news for real people.